Hey everyone, welcome to the Real Estate Game Changer Show. I'm your host, Mike McKay, based in the Jacksonville, Florida market. For anyone in the Jacksonville market or anyone thinking about getting into it, feel free to reach out to us. And we are an active buyer in the Jacksonville market if anyone is looking to sell any deals here. Each and every week, we do this show with people who are changing the game of real estate all over the country. And this is a live show. So if you guys have any questions, please throw them in the chat and I'll ask them for our guest to answer. This week on the show, we have another local Jacksonville person, Adam Locklear. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, what's going on, brother?
I'm doing well, man. Let's kick it off. I mean, I know you've been in the real estate business about 21 years, but if you could maybe take us back to the beginning and share kind of how you got started in your journey.
Yeah, I was a 19-year-old kid walking through a mobile home park, which was, yeah, this is my 21st year in the business. So to kind of take you back into that moment in time, I was a surfer and a skateboarder, and I was in college. And, really what I wanted to do was hang out with my friends on the weekend. But my dad was running the local real estate investor association at the time. So he was like the president of that organization. And I was tasked with running dad's booth at monthly meetings, which meant that I had to pass out flyers and chat with investors and kind of like work in the family business at the time. So I wasn't super into it. I was getting paid like, I don't know, peanuts, $5 or $6 an hour to like pass these flyers out and do all this different stuff. And so that kind of led into me grabbing these neon flyers and going out into neighborhoods for my dad and just passing these things out. I didn't want to talk to anyone. They said I buy houses on them. I didn't care about that. So I was just like cutting yards and tossing these flyers out. And this lady stops me in this mobile home park a couple weeks into doing it. And she says, "Hey, what are you doing?" So I'm terrified. I'm trembling. I'm holding this flyer. And I stop. I'm thinking, man, I really don't want to talk to this lady. I'm shy. And I stop and I turn around and I go back up to the mobile home. Well, it turns out that she wants to sell it to me. She goes, "You know what? I really like you. I want to sell you my property." So I get on the phone, figure a few things out. I end up putting her mobile home. It was just the mobile home. And this is in 2002. And
Mhm.
so it didn't come with the land. It was just the physical mobile home. It was pretty beat up, but I kind of had an idea. And so I said, "Hey, look, I'll give you $10,000 for this property." And then I shut up because that's what they told me. They said, "Look, if you make the offer, then just be quiet. Just don't say anything after that. Just make the offer and then just, stop." So she goes, "Okay, that sounds good." So the next thing you know, I'm like scrambling, trying to put this contract together. And here's the other cool part. So I knew the RIA side of things. So I literally go from flyer to flyer. I go
Mhm.
home, I print the other flyer. I've got this deal. I take it to the meeting and I mark this thing up $10,000. This lady at the meeting buys it and I made $10,000 just right off my first deal. So I was hooked after that, going to college for business management and economics, which did help me launch businesses. I ended up wholesaling houses while I was a college kid. And then when I came out, I was getting offered these banking jobs at all the big banks and the financial institutions and all these different jobs. I just couldn't work any of them because I was already making like 50 to 60 grand in the early 2000s, like wholesaling houses. And I would just surf all the time and hang out on the beach with my friends. So that's kind of how I got going. And I've been doing it for 21 years.
That's the old school disposition strategy is printing
That's it.
flyers and bringing them to the RIA meeting.
That was it, bro. That was it. We didn't have to do all the things we have to do now. So, everything changes for a good reason. And, you have to adapt and just kind of keep going as the market roars. And I think that's kind of what's going on right now is that things are changing and nothing stays the same. And so one of the secrets of adapting along the way was just constantly figuring out what's the new thing or what's working or how can I make some money right now? What should I be focused on to succeed?
Yeah. And what were those changes that you made over the years? Like you started wholesaling, right? And then obviously you do a lot more than that now. So what were the different seasons of your business?
There's been so many different changes and so many different seasons. I think we're moving in on our fourth or fifth business cycle since we got started, and so you kind of understand that that comes along every so often.
Mm-hmm.
We went through a saturated market, of course. So once again, I was talking in 2002. So as the family business roared, the family built a portfolio, and then that became property management businesses and construction businesses and all these ancillary businesses that pop up around what you're doing. So as you first start out, maybe you're doing a couple deals a year, and then it becomes a couple deals a month, and then maybe it becomes 20 or 30 a month. I mean, you don't get from doing 2 deals a month to 20 deals a month without having some type of a system. And
Mm-hmm.
then as you go along, you realize that you're really building a business. And so all these other businesses kind of pop up around like what you're doing. Like I've seen people that are in the cold calling space to start skip tracing businesses because they realize that somebody else is getting a piece of that pie. So then they eventually take control of that.
Mm-hmm.
We did not always manage our properties in house, but then at some point we realized, like, hey, if we're going to continue to do this, we're going to have property management. We didn't always do construction in house. We had to figure that piece out. And so as we moved along this business cycle and all through these different things, these businesses popped up around them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We went right through the real estate crash. We were building new. We lost all millions of dollars off building spec homes on speculation, which we call spec homes, and we're using hard money to finance new builds. That's dangerous in the market switch. We lost all our buyers. We had nowhere to fall back on, so we had to liquidate those. We ended up buying properties in low income areas, and we learned that piece, and we learned how to manage in those areas, and then that gave us this super secret juice that kind of carried us through the next phase, which was bank foreclosures. And then so we bought,
Mm-hmm.
you know, gosh, thousands of bank foreclosures during that time. And we paired investors up with them, kept some of them ourselves, built our own portfolios. And then we went into normal real estate markets, flipped houses, did rentals, brought on partners, did private money, and just kept doing deals. Then we went right through this real estate boom that happened not too long ago. And we already knew it was a boom. You know, when a lot of you didn't realize it was a boom, we knew it was a boom. So we knew what's up's coming down. So we were making plans ahead of time for when the market could potentially crash. So what we did is we went out and we bought affordable rental homes where we thought that tenants
Mm-hmm.
would still be able to have a place to live no matter what. So we spent the last couple of years just acquiring more low income and affordable type stuff. We were still flipping, but we never got involved in a flip deal that we could not keep as a rental. So that was one of our roles the last few years. It's still one of our roles now. Like we'll flip houses, but we stayed out of luxury markets and we went into bread and butter areas that we knew we could keep as rentals.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of along the way, just adjusting to the market, just making sure that there's always a demand, that there's always somebody that's going to live in our home, because at the end of the day, it's a brick and mortar business. So we never
Mm-hmm.
really got too into virtual wholesaling, or we always kind of had the backup plan that if we get involved in a real estate transaction, we're prepared to own this thing.
Yeah. Gotcha. And then you mentioned like kind of you got into the the management of like kind of lower income housing. There's a lot of challenges that obviously come with that. Like what were some of those and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, there's an incredible amount of challenges to get into low income housing. Spoiler alert, the good news is anytime somebody doesn't, anytime not everyone wants to do something, it creates an incredible opportunity for you. So we had started with Section 8 and HUD housing, and that was a great place to start because they had all these guidelines, they had all these rules and regulations, and we had to follow them. So if we were doing a renovation, there was a checklist. We had to pull out our pen, check the boxes, and go down the line and make sure that we had screens on all the windows or that there was no peeling paint. There was a certain level, and there still is, there's a certain level of conditions within the home that have to be met for us to even rent the property. So
Hmm.
very early on, we followed those guidelines, and then we kind of graduated out of that as we learned the business, as we got better at collections, as we got better at tenant retention, as we got better at set like during COVID, we had to set up payment plans with tenants. We didn't even try to evict these tenants. Like we never got into the game of like, hey, you got to leave, because we kind of saw what was going on, and we realized that if we get in a fight with all of our tenants during this COVID time, that's probably not going to be a good situation. So
Hmm.
we very early on, like early 2020, decided we're going to set up payment plans with these tenants. And
Hmm.
if they need another job, we're going to work with them. We're going to refer them to jobs. We did everything we could to salvage these relationships. So I would say maybe one of the biggest factors of managing low income that we learned along the way is relationships, like having a good relationship with your tenant. It's a two-way street. Let's work this out. That doesn't mean anyone gets to live for free. Everyone has to pay their bills, right? If we go do a burr on a property and we have a mortgage, we still have a mortgage to pay. And we have
Hmm.
no problem telling the tenant that, love you, but we got a mortgage to pay. We got to work this out. What can we do? What's going on? And then so communication is probably the super secret sauce, and a lot of people don't have the attitude of wanting to have communication in low income. I don't know why, but they just don't want to talk to the tenants. So we have, very good communication, and we answer the phone when people call, and we just have conversations with people, and that's really helped us out along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been through a lot of real estate, some real estate cycles, and probably faced a lot of different challenges along the way. Is there any other challenges that come to mind?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges of being involved in real estate investing. You have to have the proper insurance. You need good attorneys. You need good teams. You need good systems. And some of the challenges were one of the things I like to tell my mentoring students is many entrepreneurs suffer from what I call entrepreneurial ADD. Okay. So, one of the biggest challenges that I have faced along the way is chasing bright and shiny objects.
Hmm.
I mean, there was literally a period probably even 10 years ago now where we had to have every software. I mean, every software that came out, we would try it and subscribe to it and we'd spend time on it. And I don't even know if it was the few $100 a month on the CRM or whatever that was the waste. It was really the time and the energy that we could have been putting somewhere where we already knew we made money. So it would have been
Hmm.
smarter to double or triple down on the strategies that we knew how to succeed in and just have less strategies than it would have been to just be like, oh, well, this is good or that's good or that's good. And so, yeah, one of the challenges along the way is just not being focused enough. I mean, there's a lot to be said about people that will go really hard on one business or one strategy and they'll just become the best at it.
Hmm.
So probably one of my biggest regrets along the way would I should have doubled and tripled down way harder on the things I knew that worked.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like entrepreneurs are notorious for being like, wow, this is really working well. Let me try something new. Like,
Yeah,
makes no
it's
sense
like, how do
almost.
I get to the next level, right? Like this works, this is great, but what I really need to do to scale or supercharge this is now bring in something else,
Yeah.
right? Well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Gotcha. And then obviously there's been a lot of changes, in the market, even call it like the last 8 or 9 months, everywhere, but especially in Jacksonville. Do you want to talk about those changes and what you've adapted in your business?
Yeah, for sure. So we thought this in early 2022 that the market was changing. I don't know if you saw any of my social posts, but I was posting a lot about that the market was changing, that you just can't feel it yet. And a lot of realtors and mortgage brokers pushed back on me and said, no, it's not. Everything's fine. Everything's changing. Nothing's changing. It's just there's still not enough supply and all this stuff. And there are some truths in a lot of the information out there. And it's also true that the market did not begin changing in like the third quarter of 2022. There were signs. There were signs in early 2022 that my team and I started to see. And it was just like, it wasn't like someone turned the faucet off, it was just a little less trickle. Like if
Mm,
you were, let's say you're doing 10 deals a month, like you were doing seven or eight. And so we started to see it. So by the second quarter of last year, we started making some changes, and we knew that our property management business was recession proof, and
mhm,
we've known that for years. So we started to put a little more energy into that, and that's paid off pretty well. And then we started to think about how we're doing business. So we were doing a lot of flips, and we said, you know what, let's maybe slow down on the flips a little bit. And what I mean
mhm,
by that is when we were underwriting those flip deals, we said, hey, you know what, we're not doing a flip deal that doesn't start with $50,000 profit. We're not going to
mm,
touch anything that has 20 or 30K. And we did. I mean, when the market was hot, we saw everything going up. Did we get into deals where we made 20K? Absolutely. Right. I mean, did we wholesale deals or buy deals where we only made 5 to 10K? Yes, we did. But when we saw the market changing, we immediately adapted and decided we're not getting into any deals that do not have fat profits. And then we
Hmm.
just went through our balance sheet and went through our income statements, and we shored up our business. We got rid of like any excess expenses that we didn't need. And, we got a hold of our balance sheets and we cut expenses, and we just got our company in whatever shape it needed to be. So around June of last year, the market really, it became very apparent that things were slowing down. Well, we had already built in those safety margins on some of our flip deals, and we had built in some of those safety margins on some of our monthly rent. Like we saw rents going up and going up and going up, and then we started to see indications that that could level off really kind of really like the last quarter of 2021 even. And so we kind of just continued to be careful as we underwrote our deals. Like if it was $2,000 a month rent, we'd say, well, let's make sure this deal works at $1,800 a month rent too. That way, if the
Hmm.
market changes a little bit, and things have been pretty good, we've been very successful with our rental side of the business, and we have new strategies we're working on. So those are working out too. And we underwrote deals on the flip side of things. And most of them worked out and some of them didn't. So that's just part of a market change. I mean, you want to keep going and you want to keep doing business. And, the worst thing you can do is get some stinking thinking going on. And then all of a sudden, like everything's bad. And like, oh, it's just that no one can succeed anymore. And that's just not true.
Yeah. And I think that's a point that we were talking about a little offline, right? I mean, you said you were doing 12 flips around that time, and there were a couple of those that weren't profitable. Do you just want to share that? Because I think it's something that no one talks about, and it's important for people to understand the mindset of how you
Yeah, no,
keep
I think
going.
it's great. I think it's really good to talk about failures from people that have done it for a long time, because we can share stuff with you that maybe you haven't seen yet. And it just seems like nobody wants to talk about their failures. And I get that. But, in our situation, we carried a dozen flips from last year into the new year. And of course, we dealt with the market changing a little bit. I mean, it had some properties that, I'll just give you an example. Like I had one that was here in North Florida, was worth $300,000 when it on the appraisal value, and that's what we were going to try to sell it for when we finished the renovations. And by the time we got to put it on the market, it was worth like 315. So that was great, and that's what we have dealing with the last few years, and that was wonderful. And then there's two properties out of the dozen that we carried over that lost value. And this is a thing. I mean, if you've been paying attention to what other people are doing around, the country, there are some people that have lost, and there's some markets that have lost way worse than Jacksonville. Jacksonville's actually done pretty well, but I had another one that was right at that 300 mark. It became worth 270. Well, that stung because on that same deal, the renovations went 10, 15 over. So I think when it's all said and done on that particular deal, I'm going to lose $5,000,
Hmm.
but I'm making 50,000 on another deal. So my net between those two deals is 45. And this is, I'm just going to look at the net of all of the deals together, like that whole dozen, that whole grouping of deals I was doing. I'm just going to look at the net effect of all of it. That way
Hmm.
I'm not super upset off one closing and then super excited on another. It doesn't really matter. I'm trying to complete all of them and get out of that entire batch of properties. And we still have a few stragglers. And look, uh, if you can win most of the time and lose just a little bit of the time, then you'll do really well. I think the difficulty is people get in their first deal, or they haven't done that many deals, or maybe they buy their first rental property and they're unable to get the refi done on the burr because mortgage rates went higher. And that stings. I mean, it's like 100% loss on the one deal you did really puts a bad taste in your mouth. And
Yeah.
so, as being the more experienced investor, it's just kind of letting you know that get through those deals, finish those deals, get into new, better deals in the market that are going to be better, that you're going to analyze and underwrite based off of today. So don't be discouraged. There's plenty of money to be made. Get out there, get a new deal. If you're in a losing deal right now, or if you're in a deal that doesn't feel too great, get it done. Don't walk away from your deal. Finish your deal, take the loss, and then go out and get a better deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. Definitely. Um, you mentioned some new strategies on the rental side of things. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So one of the strategies that I'm doing right now is not a new strategy. It's an old strategy, and it's the best strategy. Okay, in my opinion. And I've spoken with other, really successful investors, and so my favorite thing to do is to raise private money and go out there and bring on private investors, and particularly people that may have money like in the stock market, any type of money that's just sitting there and not doing a whole lot. Okay.
Hmm.
Any type of money like that. And just explaining to them that even the stock market's not for certain. Bonds are paying what they're going to be paying now, and they won't pay that forever. And it would be a nice diversification to put your money in real estate. And I would love to do that. Let's go buy a rental property. I'll bring a value add deal. You put the money out, up, and let's ride off into the sunset. We'll split it. I'll handle everything. And that's my favorite strategy. I've been doing more and more of that as the market has changed. Not really. I mean, when money was cheap, I didn't need them as much. And so I was doing a lot of Burr properties. But as the money became more expensive, I don't want to stop buying rental properties. So it's really important for me that I'm able to go out and be able to raise private capital so I can keep investing in rental properties. And
Hmm.
then the other strategy that I'm changing on that side right now is I'm doing a lot more rent per room type strategy. So I'm still buying houses. I'm breaking the house apart. And a lot of our tenants were doing this anyways. We found out they have like these side deals going, and they're like bringing people into the house anyways.
Yeah.
But I had a big mind block on it where I didn't want to do it because it seemed like a mess. And then so I really didn't do it until I had to do it. And then as like, because you guys know what happened, right? Like mortgages became more expensive. So the cost of money went up, but prices didn't crash. So I'm still having to spend a pretty penny to buy my rental properties. So something's got to give here, right? So if we can't really boost the bottom side on cash flow, then we need to boost the top side. And the way to boost the top side on cash flow, rent out individual rooms for like $150 or $200 per week, and take that 15 to 2,000 a month gross rent and increase it to between $4,000 and $5,000 a month gross rent. Now you're still going to have expenses. You're going to have more expenses, right? You need to learn how to run those numbers. But now I don't have to buy as many properties, right? Like now, maybe I was trying to buy 50 properties and then do the Burr method on them, where I'm going to buy them and renovate them and rent them and refi them, right?
Hmm.
But I don't need it because those properties were only earning like $200, $300 a month positive cash flow,
Hmm.
right? So do the math on that. Like if I don't want a day job, because I never want a day job, by the way, guys. Like I've never had one. W-2s don't exist for me. My family doesn't like to work for other people. So like we don't really do that. Okay. So if I run the math on like, hey, I just turned 40. So like if I run the math on like, hey, Adam never wants to work again at 40 years old, $200 to $300 a month on each property. I need a boatload of these things to get to my I'm never going to work again point, right?
Hmm.
But you don't need that when you're cranking out $1,000 or $1,500 a month. And I know you do vacation rentals and stuff, right, Mike?
I used to do a lot of them. Yeah.
Right. Well, you don't need as many properties with this
Yep.
rent per room strategy because you're increasing the gross so much. So, just a recap there, using private money to take down deals and basically fire the bank. Like, why do we need the bank anyways? They're just an intermediary. So, forget the bank, using private money to invest, and then increasing the gross rents by renting out each room.
So in that first strategy, the private money strategy, so they're essentially putting up the equity for the deal as opposed to making a private loan on it, and then you're not refining it. You're just keeping it in the house
Yep.
for, is there like a set period of time that you guys agree on, or?
Yeah, you definitely could. So here's where being creative comes in, right? You need to learn what's going on with your. Don't call them a private money lender because this person is an equity partner, like Mike said. Okay,
Mhm.
so they're an equity partner, they're an investor. Think about them more as a silent partner. Okay, but you guys can go in and own whatever entity you're owning together. I'm not going to give the legal advice on that. Chat with your attorney about the best way to do that, but in my scenario, we go in and we buy the asset together, and they put the money up, you know, for all the purpose. This is how people do stuff in the commercial world. This is how people buy apartment complex. It's the same thing. I'm the GP, they're the LP,
Mhm.
and they put the money up, and then I just do everything else. And then at the end of the day, we just split the net right down the middle.
Mhm.
Okay. We keep it super, super simple. I
Mhm.
never treat them like a lender. They never treat me like, I'm sweat equity. Like we're partners. Okay. So we come in together and we put this together. Okay. And then, look, it really works out. Like when I get into the super complex, like private capital raising 503b like this is too small for that.
Yeah.
Okay, this is literally going to your uncle and being like, look man, I know how to find really good deals, I know how to fix them up, and I know how to deal with the tenants, and I'll handle everything. You put the money up, I'll make everything else happen, including providing the deal. We split the money at the end of the day. You're probably going to get 500 a month, I'm probably going to get 500 a month. And then if we want to leverage it, that's up to us. We can make
Right.
that decision. Okay. But it all starts with the idea that you put the cash up. You don't want to go into the leverage conversation to start. Okay. So you put the cash up, I'm the operator, we split it. Then once they get involved and they're like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. And conversations will start happening like, well, hey man, I only have a quarter million. So like I can only do like a couple of deals, but what if we leverage these things up a little bit and put like 30, 40, 50% leverage on them? Like, what do you think about that? Right.
Mm.
And because we already have the understanding of how we're operating. So we're not going to change any of that. But now, like, maybe we could refi this and get some of the cash back and then go do more deals.
Yeah.
Okay. So it very much starts with the 50-50 cash type thing. And then it doesn't have to, but it may evolve into, you know, let's leverage this portfolio up and go buy more.
Yeah. And are you ever still doing the, private lender birthing anymore, where they're actually a lender and then burring out of that, or have you kind of paused
Yeah,
that
for
just
sure.
to where? Okay.
So we're only doing that on our golden goose deals. And that
Okay.
would mean that these are the best deals that we get. Maybe we're buying them for 50% of the after repaired value, or maybe we're even buying them for less than that. Or maybe they just don't need as much repair or they're in a good area. So we're cherry picking those deals. We're always going to be doing that. I mean, that's one of the awesome things you get to do. Like when you're at ground zero as a deal finder, you get to decide what happens with that deal. Like no one else is controlling that deal. Like if you're direct to seller, it's game on, right? I want to
Yeah.
keep that deal. It never sees the light of day. I want to call my buddy up and say, hey, put down $150,000 on this thing, and then I'm going to refi and pay you back. I'll pay you 10%, whatever. I can do that, right? So it's just really kind of taking a deal by deal. And to answer the question, yeah, we're still doing that, but we need better deals now.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
To
sure.
make it work. Yeah.
Yeah, because the cost of money is higher, and the lenders have a little more strict guidelines now because they're trying to protect their self as well.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about sourcing those deals. I mean, I'm sure you've done everything from handing out flyers in the street in mobile home parks to many other strategies. In today's market, what are you doing to source these
Eh,
deals?
The same thing I've been doing this whole time, everything, right? So, one of the things I say is that everything works and nothing works. What that means is just find out exactly what's working for you at the time and then just go right at it, right? So, does cold calling work? Yes, it does. Okay. Does running online ads work? Does SEO work? We've put We put some time and energy into SEO the last 6 months because we're like, hey, you know what? Maybe we don't have as much competition from Open Door and some of these other. There are a million of these like iBuyers, right? There's not a million of them anymore. So there are still some, but we just felt like, hey, it's probably a good time to go into SEO. Um, I will go ahead and give you one of my biggest strategies, and you guys are going to try to copy me now, but this is kind of already out there. But we're using AI a good bit to speed the game up of just about everything we're doing on the acquisition side, right?
Hmm.
Chat GPT to write this, chat GPT to write that, right? And it's speeding up everything, and it's reducing the cost of marketing greatly. A lot of these marketing companies are suffering now because like really what you were paying for was for a lot of creative writing and sales copy and stuff like that. Now, if you go out and learn Chat GPT or Jasper or one of these other Jasper's run on Chat GPT anyways, if you go out and learn some of this stuff, it's a pretty good time to go out and do some marketing. So
Hmm.
marketing's got a whole lot better. I like ads. I like SEO. I still like cold calling. Are you still doing cold calling?
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like cold calling. I think that like some of the things are probably going to work. I need to get back to doing some direct mail. I have not done as much of that lately. It would be interesting to chat with someone that's dumping a bunch of money to direct mail marketing right now because I think
Hmm.
that's probably going to come back to a certain degree. I'm not getting as much stuff in my mailbox as I was, so I always try to think about like I know that all this stuff works, and I'm always just trying to see like a lot of people will go do something because everyone else is doing it, but when it comes to marketing, I do the opposite. I'm
Yeah.
always trying to figure out what I already know works that you guys aren't doing. So that's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to work on.
We spun up direct mail again recently for that exact same reason.
Yeah, I think direct mail is going to be relevant. I think that you need to know how to target correctly. You need to know how to test. And really, just with any marketing, you got to have the proper time to do that. And I've always bought houses off referrals. I don't have to do as many right now. So I'm just reaching out to every contact I have and all the time. I mean, my bookkeeper just gave me a spin-off deal from a friend of hers. And I just let everyone know all the time. I'm just, sphere of influence. I'm just constantly telling everybody. And I do this in person, like when people are chatting with me, I'm like, man, I need to buy a few houses, and I get deals from that. So spin-off referral deals has been really good.
Yeah. So what's like an example like of specifically where you guys are implementing Chat GPT, like in what like specific channel or
Yeah,
app?
we're using it to write all of our listings.
No
So
way.
yeah, I'm done writing descriptions on listings. I don't know if that's going to get me in trouble, but yep, I don't write any descriptions anymore on anything I'm selling. Um, and we're using it to write ad copy for Facebook. We're using it to write articles for our websites, and we use it to write emails too. So
Mm,
our management company is using ChatGPT to write emails, to put together templates. Any standard work stuff, we're using it for that. Um, we're using it to write manuals for different things and training
mm,
purposes. And I'm actually putting together an educational class from my book right now. Okay, so
mhm,
here's my book. This book here. All right, it's on Amazon. I'm pulling apart a chapter of my book right now, and I'm using Chat GPT to write the outline, which will become a PowerPoint, which will be bullet points that I will then turn around and create a screencast educational video to teach you guys how to do what I do. And instead of sitting down and writing the super long PowerPoint, which I can do, but it's just probably 3 hours of my life, which I would
mhm.
rather spend finding deals or creating wealth. ChatGPT is going to speed that up for me, right?
Yeah.
But I've already written this content, so I'm taking the book that I wrote and then I'm repurposing content in other places.
Yeah. That's a great idea, using it for repurposing content, right? You've written it once, and why not have it convert it to all
We
these
use it for
different.
all types of stuff. We use it for reels. We use it for posts. We use all types of stuff, design
Yeah.
stuff, all types of stuff. Yeah.
We use it for our reels too. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah. And that's just AI. I mean, that's AI in general, right? So like
Yeah.
there's a million different apps out there. I just saw an app that updates your headshot. and it's AI.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like AI headshot, and it's pretty good. It will mess with you. Okay, like I've seen people posting it. I'm like, that's not AI, but then his watch looks weird, so then you can tell, right? But that
Wow.
stuff's coming too, right? You should be able to grab a picture of yourself, like and then make it your headshot.
Yeah.
Yep.
So other changes that you guys have made outside of kind of the way you're obviously structuring your capital for acquiring rentals and making sure you're buying flips with bigger margins. Anything else change in the last, let's call it 9, 10 months?
Yeah, we're a little smaller than we were. I mean, when you're not doing as many deals, that means that you're not doing as much renovation work. So it's
Mm,
been a nice time to really, really get lean. And there's nothing wrong with running lean. I mean, we ran lean for years and then we had expanded a lot because we had to, because we were doing volume. And now we're not doing as much volume, which is fine. So it's actually kind of relieving. I've probably surfed more in the last couple months than I had in the few years before that. So getting a little more water time, which is fun. And then just really carving the team out, just making sure that whoever is around our group of companies is super motivated and exciting and wants to be there. And so it's a great time to build culture.
hmm.
And yeah, so I would say that we've just really kind of focused on less, but gotten better at what we're doing.
Cool. And you mentioned like building culture, right? So you've obviously been building your company or group of companies for a long time. What are some strategies that you hear people talk about this all the time? Culture is everything in the company. Culture is everything. But what are you
Culture's a
doing
lot.
to?
Yeah, culture's a big deal.
Yeah.
One of the things I've seen is create. You guys can't see the rest of the office that I'm in right now, but we have like coffee tables in here and neon signs. It's very South Beach feeling and very chill. We have like gourmet coffee, and I think that creating a place that people want to be and
Hmm.
making sure that people are comfortable and happy, and then just communicating and then just being available. If you're a business owner, you should be available to people to answer questions. And just having a presence and being a leader, and just making sure that we have fun. And one of the things I would brag on our companies for is like it's a pretty darn cool place to work. I mean, people really enjoy themselves. We don't take ourselves too serious, and we empower people.
Hmm.
Definitely empowering people, letting them own their own job, letting them make their own mistakes, but letting them grow.
Hmm.
And that's always a mentality that I've had. I've done it successfully, and I've done it unsuccessfully. So just making sure that everyone has support and that we have a really cool culture, and we're very authentic. So we make sure that like people get to say how they feel, and people get to be known and chat. And we're a family grown business. And I had some really good advice when I was in college. I got to meet with the Davidson family of Harley Davidson and chat with some of the uh, siblings that were running the company, and they had all the same problems that we had in a family business. And we just kind of learned how to do that. And then that really kind of bleeds into the way that we treat our employees. It's never corporate. It's always homegrown, and people tend to like it. So
Yeah. What are some lessons? You mentioned you've done it well and you haven't done it well with empowering people. So what are some lessons you've learned over the years?
yeah, one of the mistakes I made in the past was not, as I just said, like empowering someone and then dipping out, right? Like
Sure.
you got this, I'm good. I know you know how to do your job, and I'll see you in 3 months, right? I'm going to go
Yeah.
travel the world and surf. That was a mistake. You need you need to have an open door policy,
Hmm.
and I am just not the type of CEO that ever wants to not be available. So I
Hmm.
make myself available, even if I'm traveling or I'm busy or whatever is going on. I want to make sure that I have that open door policy. And then I think early on, just being really scared of opening up and being authentic, and just kind of letting people in. I know a lot of people, for whatever reason, create like barriers and walls. I just kind of broke those down and just once again just made sure I was approachable and that people could chat with me and that we could have real conversations. And because everyone's got stuff going on in their life. And if you really want to just kind of siphon them off into the corner or get super strict and just take it down to the rules and regulations, I think you're kind of hurting your culture if you have a
Hmm.
small business when you're doing that. It's like you're running it like it's a big business, but it's not. So I've never, those are some of the mistakes I've made is like getting too corporate or just being, and look, it doesn't mean you don't have rules and guidelines and things like that. A lot of it has to do with the approach.
Hmm.
So I'm just always here and I'm always available. And if anyone has any problems, I know who to talk to.
Cool. And then I know something you've done over the years, and I think you're growing it a lot now, is your mentoring program. Do you want to share a little bit about what that is and what you're looking to accomplish there?
Yeah, so this is not a super thought out business, right? This is very much investor like demanded. You guys wanted it, and we held out for a really long time. So we did free education for probably over a decade, and some people may remember that. We had all these free classes, and that was fine. And people kept approaching us and asking us, "Will you teach me how to make like $50,000 on a flip deal? Will you teach me how to buy rental properties and grow a portfolio? Will you teach me how to start and run a property management business or a construction business? Or I own a real estate brokerage. Will you teach me how to run a real estate brokerage that's investor focused? Like, will you teach me how to do those things?" And then there are granular things that people wanted to learn, like how to estimate repairs inside of a house, how
Hmm.
to analyze deals, how to find the deals. And so what we found was that people would go on YouTube and they would watch these training videos, and that was fine. But then they would come to our physical class and sit down, and they would raise their hand like every 2 seconds and kind of really not understand or know how to really make money in the business. So
Hmm.
we eventually put together like a weekend training, and then that became kind of like a 90-day thing. And then we eventually last year launched the full on mentoring program that I run, which is Real Investor Mentors. And it's a 12-month long intensive program where we take you from start to finish on how to find deals, how to fix them up, how to fund them if you need to, how to exit those deals. And then we talk a lot about like what is an income thing that makes you money in the business. I'll give you
Hmm.
an example: wholesaling versus
Hmm.
building wealth. Like, and how do you
Hmm.
do that? And what strategy should you take? You know, how much time do you have on your hands? What are your assets? What are you good at? What do you know? And so what we found is that a lot of people would walk into our free meetings back in the day and they would say, well, hey, I was listening to this guru dude and he said to do this. So that's what I'm going to do. So we would say, why? Why is that what you should do? And they would
Hmm.
never have an answer. They would always say, well, because he said so. Like this guy said so. Okay. And so we would say, well, hey, maybe that is a great strategy. Maybe it's really good for him and maybe it's really good for a lot of people, but let's talk about you. And so what
Hmm.
we ended up doing was really taking more of a customized approach. When someone comes into our mentoring program, we build that program around that individual person. Instead of
Hmm.
the one size fits all thing, we figure out how they can be successful. And then we get out and do some deals. So the last thing I'll say about the mentoring program is you guys that are in the program are kicking butt. We're really proud of you. I don't know how like we had no idea the community that we were building when we started, and we're just super proud of everybody that's in the program. You guys are kicking butt. So that's
Cool.
my favorite part. I love seeing people grow.
That's awesome, man. Cool. And then I think we were talking a little bit offline before. I know we touched on it a bit, like different challenges that you faced over the years, and then we just talked a lot about the last, call it 9 or 10 months, right? But there's obviously been other challenges. I mean, I know you guys, run your whole construction business now. I mean, that was probably a challenge to
Oh, for
start. And
sure.
well, you want to talk a little bit maybe about that portion of the business?
The construction business.
Yeah, starting
That's
that
a really
challenge.
hard business. That is a really, really tough business, guys. Running labor is not easy. Running the financials is challenging. Um, one of the if not the one of the most valuable person in a construction company is actually the estimator. And
Mm,
you can lose a lot of money on wood or dirt if you're building new, or concrete if you're building new, or because it's not hard to get a quote on cabinets. Okay, but if you're taking a load bearing wall out and you let some jackleg handyman do that, you could be in for a world of trouble. So there's
mm,
been, I've been very fortunate because I had a mentor and my dad who was a general contractor and still is.
mm,
He explained the engineering calculations and what was happening with the load going from the roof all the way down through the footers and like these 1920s and 30s houses. A lot of
mm,
people don't get that training, so they don't understand what's going on. And so, one of the challenges of construction is construction, right? Like at the end of the day, it's a real thing. You got real, it's brick and mortar business. You've got windows, you've got walls, you've got wood, and you've got plumbing and electrical and HVAC and roof and all these different components. And it can be a lot to think about.
mm,
So as we got better at estimating, we came up with our own estimate sheets. And then we go in and we update those all of the time. And so when we're looking at deals, it's very helpful for us. I still do this. We still fill out the estimate sheet because it's a lot to think about. We don't want to miss anything. And then we'll go back and chat with our team, whether that's a roofer or an HVAC guy, or maybe that's just our handyman that's doing a little bit of handiwork around the project. We just want to make sure that our prices are in line. So we want to make sure we check in on those every 30 days. Then there's
mm,
like there's a whole bunch of other challenges. Like if you're doing structural changes on a property and you're not pulling permits, you could be in a world of trouble and with code enforcement for not pulling some of those permits. So there's some risk there. And then just the fact that you're doing a major renovation. I mean, let's say that you get into $100,000 renovation project that takes you 6 months. Well, now you're at the you're dealing with the market. Like, what if the market changes during that time, or wood goes up, or something happens in China and we can't get the right wire? So now the electrical goes up 30%. There is some risk in doing large renovation projects. So, one of
mm.
the challenges over the years has been staying in budget, from the estimate, and so you can put a little buffer in there. You can put in like a what if happens type, buffer within your renovation projects. And I think that's going to help out a lot. We've done that over the years.
Gotcha. And for your any advice to people who are kind of maybe looking at doing their first flip and, you know, just on the, obviously on the construction side of things.
Yeah, get a partner that understands construction would be the number one best piece of advice I can give you, because there's a lot of challenges there and it's
Hmm.
not getting any easier. If you want to do it on your own, then just don't do a major renovation. We can,
Mm,
anybody can handle flooring and carpet and paint and all the things that do not require us to pull a permit. So stay out of permit land and stay out of structural changes, and you'll be okay. You just do less work.
yeah, gotcha. And then, are you guys still doing for a long time? You were doing a lot of turnkeying of properties for other investors. Are you still doing that in this changing market, or where do you stand on those?
Yeah, so as the market changed and money became more expensive, what we found out is that people need to put more cash into their deals.
Mm,
So mostly what we're doing right now is working with people that we have established relationships with.
mm,
Okay. That being said, we're willing to chat with people and see if we're a good fit, but we're not actively like marketing for it. Like we had a lot of marketing for it. So yeah, the answer is yes, we're still doing it, but if you're interested in that, you're going to have to reach out to us personally.
gotcha. Cool. Well, we're getting towards the end here, and there's always two questions that I like to ask at the end. And the first one is, what is the craziest or most uncomfortable situation you've ever experienced in a real estate deal?
Yeah, it took me about 2 seconds to think about this one, Mike, because I will never forget as a 22-year-old kid walking into the house that I just bought as my own rental property with a big smile on my face, too. Man, I was so proud of myself that I bought this thing. I was going to fix it up. And as I walk through the front door, there's a dead guy right there.
Oh,
As soon as I walk in the front door, this guy is right there on the floor, dead as a doornail. The worst thing I've ever seen, the worst thing I've ever smelled. I had to obviously call the authorities, and then I had to sit there and go through the whole process, help them fill out the report and the whole thing. It was horrible, man. We had to kills the walls. We had to do like the whole thing. So
oh,
I haven't seen anything that was as traumatic since. Even like losing money on deals was somehow not that intense.
yeah,
So.
that's a hard one to beat. So,
Mhm.
cool. Well, second question is if you could go back in time, give yourself one piece of advice when you were looking for that first deal, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, no, if I could go back and chat with 19-year-old Adam, I would say this: keep that house. Don't wholesale that house. Keep that house and keep every single house you possibly can.
Mm,
Okay? Don't spend it on Jeeps. um, just invest more. I mean, I would have, if I could go back and give myself that advice. And, investments don't always feel incredible in real time, right? Like
mm,
there's lots of deals that I've actually gone back and looked that I wholesaled and sold to somebody else that made $100,000 from the deal that I wholesaled them and made 10K. So I gave away 9/10 or 90K of that wealth to that other person. So I would just go back and say, hey, just try to keep every single rental property you can, and I would have had a whole lot more houses. Okay, that's it.
yeah. Yeah.
Invest.
Good advice. Um, so if people want to reach out to you after the show, whether it's about the mentoring program, property management, maybe they have a deal they want to send you, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, it's super easy. Just head on over to adamlocklear.com, fill the form out, and we'll have somebody in touch with you. If you do need property management, just go to locklearmanagement.com. But we have the team available at both websites, and they're standing by, and they'd be happy to chat with you.
Cool. And if any, have you launched the YouTube channel yet, or is that coming soon? If you want to shout it out.
YouTube channel technically exists. There's a couple of videos on there. Just go type in Adam Locklear on YouTube and you'll find it. But yeah, we have a whole lot more training going on. My brother and I are working really hard on getting our content mapped out. So we'll have some pretty cool training coming up for you guys.
Sweet. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for being on the show. This is great.
Yeah, for sure, Mike. I appreciate it, man.